North Carolina faces undefeated Oklahoma tonight in the Jumpman Invitational in the last critical non-conference resume building opportunity of the season. And oh, by the way, this one is personal for our guy, Coach Pat Kilby.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined today, as we are every Wednesday, by our guy, Coach Pat Kilby. And we want to thank you everydayers for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch to get your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Look, it's going to be a massive day of college basketball. It's not just the Tar Heels. We got great action going on tonight, and you're going to want to be part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, where we're going to be talking about this game all day long and all night long, quite frankly. So if you want to get in on that action with a bunch of other great Tar Heel folks, come join us. The link to that is in the show notes. A couple other things coming up today. Basically, all we're doing is just getting ready for this game in a couple different ways. The Four Corners preview. We're going to talk about Oklahoma, get to know them a little bit. Look at what does it mean if Carolina wins this game? What does it mean if Carolina loses this game? And so we'll get into all that. Two other quick things, though. Number one, we just learned on Tuesday that the other podcast that I host, Locked On College Basketball, has been nominated by the Sports Podcast Awards as best basketball show. And we are shortlisted with a group of every other show on it is NBA podcasts. And so we got a rep for all the college hoops lovers out there. So would be honored if you would go and vote for Locked On College Basketball at that. Next thing, yesterday, I completely forgot to give the Tuesday trivia answer at the end of the show. So I got to do that now. The question, by the way, there are only two players in UNC history to wear 00. Eric Montross was one of them. And the question was, who was the other? And who are the other six players that have worn just the single 0? Pack, you got any ideas on this, who it might be?
No, I can think of a couple zeros, but not 00.
Well, give me the zeros.
I know, well, Anthony Harris.
Yep, that's one.
Seth Trimble last year was a 0.
Yep, there you go. That's a great get.
But other than that, I don't know. I'm lost on that one. I don't know that I can get it.
00 was Brendan Haywood.
Oh, yep.
And then the other four single zeros were Jesse Holley, who was the first interview we ever had on this podcast, if I remember correctly, Joel James, Nate Britt, and the YouTube superstar, Mr. Seventh Woods. So that's your other guys. All right, Pac, let's dive right into this thing. Here's where we got to go first. This is a key critical game for North Carolina. As we've been talking about multiple times on the show, this is the first time in Carolina history the Tar Heels have played 5 ranked teams in a span of 6 games in the regular season. This is the last one of those. Carolina is 2-2 in the first 4 of those games. And so there's something about 3-2 that feels a whole lot different than 2-3. This Oklahoma team is very good, and you cannot overlook it. Pac, as you're preparing your team for a game that is this important, do you want to put that pressure on them, or do you not? How would you approach this if you were Hubert Davis?
Well, I think you have to talk about it. You know, you've got to recognize the importance of the game. There's the players really know it. So in my mind, like, the idea of skirting around it is just ignoring the fact. So, you know, for me and for our team, we like to talk about those things. This is what's at stake. We got to understand that. But at the end of the day, it still comes back to who we are as a team, and do we go execute the things we believe that we have to in order to win. And so I think that's got to be the staple, especially coming off UConn and Kentucky. You know, I don't think it's any secret we got exposed in some areas that we have to get better.
Yeah.
And I think it's got to be a talking point of, as a group, as a unit, we got to step on that court, and we got to prove that we do belong in the conversation. that we are a top 10 team in the country. And we just, and more so than that, we got to show each other that we can rebound the basketball. We can get stops when we need to get stops. We can value possessions. And so I think those things are, super critical to talk about, because, if you don't make it a priority, then it'll never be who you are. And so I think, you've got to have those open conversations.
That's so good. That's a good word. Great point about the rebounding. That's just got to be there. Carolina cannot, particularly on the offensive glass for the other team, Carolina has to finish defensive possessions with a rebound. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, I know it's a whole different animal with Kentucky, because you're just not going to face teams that long, that athletic, that big, really, frankly, ever. It's like when Carolina faced UConn in their offense. You just won't see another offense like that. But still, you got to do it. Same thing with turnovers. That's got to come down. And all of those kind of things are what help ultimately win a critical game of this nature. Now, Pack, this game is personal for you because it is the Oklahoma Sooners there in Norman, and you live in the greater Oklahoma City area. Pack, just talk to us. You were sharing some with me even before this game, before we recorded. Oklahoma, notoriously a football school. Even it seems like some Sooner fans are starting to recognize how big an opportunity this is for Boomer Sooner.
Yeah, so I'm literally less than 30 minutes from Norman, from where I live. So I'm surrounded by OU people. I will, unfortunately or fortunately, I'll be watching it with some of my friends that are OU fans. And I typically don't like to do that, just because you know how it is. You get locked in on the game. You're competitive.
I watched with some Kentucky folks on Saturday, man. I'm very well aware.
Yeah, that's tough. So anyways, hopefully it goes well for the Tar Heels. In 08, I watched the Carolina OU game with some OU people.
09, I think?
Or 09, yes, yeah. Sorry. And that went well. So we're going to keep the same routine. But, OU, man, they've had, Porter Moser's been there. This is his third season. And the first 2 years have been really average at best. And so I think a lot of the OU fans are finally starting to trust them. They're 10-0, and they're like, hey, we might be pretty good. Now we're going to play North Carolina. This is a big game. And so they're starting to get all in on it. And you're right. It's typically a football first school, but they're starting to dip their toes in the water a little bit with this basketball team. So it's going to be a fun night, and definitely a big one for OU and obviously for North Carolina.
And I think Tar Heel folks get that, but in reverse, right? It's like we're all in on basketball, but when we're a little bit good at football, we start to get cautiously optimistic until the rug gets pulled out from under us, as it has been down the stretch the past 2 years. And so I would imagine we can all understand what Sooners fans are going through right now. Like, is this real, or is this just whatever, And so I totally get where they're coming from with it. Now, Pack, as we look at this thing, I think Oklahoma is legitimately a good basketball team. However, they have, as we look at these resumes, they have not faced even, like, it's not even in the same solar system of the type of resume we have, Carolina has, versus what Oklahoma has. North Carolina has played, just in the fact of these 5 ranked teams in 6 games, like that alone tells you what you need to know. The highest ranked team that Oklahoma has played, at least from KenPom standards, is 44th. Yeah. Carolina has played 1, 2, 3, 4. This will be their 5th team ranked higher than that. So Carolina has played 5 teams ranked higher than the highest ranked team that Oklahoma has played. Oklahoma has played, what did we say, 5 teams 295th or worse at KenPom? Yep. Their non-conference strength of schedule. Listen to how different this is. Keep in mind, 362 teams in Division I. Carolina's strength of schedule so far, 17th in the country. Oklahoma's 336th. Pack, as you think about, let's put your coaching hat on, the way that prepares or doesn't prepare you to face this kind of game that's going to be in Charlotte, in, not a home game for Carolina, but it should be a pro-Carolina crowd. What does that lack of preparation, how does it hurt you if you're Oklahoma?
Well, it definitely hurts because you don't have the reps against the athleticism, the size, the speed, and that can disrupt the way you do things. or if you haven't seen a tempo quite like Carolina plays, it's hard. It's hard to emulate or simulate those things in practice. You can't.
That's so
You
true.
can't create a North Carolina basketball team in practice to go against, and so you have to get that type of thing through competition. And when you haven't seen it, and then you get exposed to it, boy, it's tough to adjust and pick those things up on the fly. And so if you're OU, you've got to try to manage those things the best you possibly can. And if you're North Carolina, you're sitting there saying, hey, this is the fifth one we've seen. This is the fifth really good team we've seen. This is nothing new to us. We know how to do what we do against really good opponents. So it's going to be really interesting to me to see how OU does match up and play with Carolina, given that they haven't really seen anybody of our stature, especially a player like Armando, with just a strong post presence. I feel like, I know we'll get into it more, but that's an area where Carolina could expose them. And so I'm just curious to see how they match up with those things.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to have to talk about that and Carolina's probable advantage in the front court. We'll look at that. And I also want to just take a peek at, hey, what's it going to mean if Carolina wins this game? What's it going to mean if Carolina loses this game? If we're talking about it being critical, that means this is a fork in the road moment. And so we'll have that conversation coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, listen, as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders. We've looked at it multiple times, but like conference regular season odds. And Carolina just keeps creeping closer to Duke. Duke plus 280, Tar Heels plus 300, Clemson plus 470, Virginia plus 550, and Miami plus 600. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-in to get in on that action or NFL action this season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, Pack, let's look at that question I just asked a second ago. If UNC wins this game, what does it mean long-term?
Well, it kind of goes back to what you mentioned a moment ago. This being the fifth top team that we've played, putting us at 3-2 record in those games, I think that's big because it's what, when we were doing our report card show, what was that, last week? We kind of talked about laying the groundwork, right, for future successes. And winning this would be part of laying that groundwork. It's, I haven't looked at the net. I imagine it's a quad one win. And so
I'll look while you're talking. Keep going.
That, would be huge for us. And I think it lays
Oklahoma's 10th in the net right now. This is unquestionably a one game.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, that alone, winning a game against the 10th team in the net is huge for us so that we can, get seeding. But it also has to do with the mentality of the team. It's like losing 3 of those games in a row to, UConn, Kentucky, and then OU. Where would we be mentally at that point? I like to think we would respond, but you never know. You are dealing with young kids and young men at this point. And so you never know where that could take you, but winning it can take you a whole different direction, get you back on the right track. You understand everything you want is still in front of you. A 1 seed in the NCAA tournament is still in front of you. Yeah. And so there's just a lot that could come with winning a game like this.
Well, let me take the opposite side of it then, because you just went to exactly where I wanted to go. What happens if Carolina loses this game? That would be a 3-game losing streak, albeit to 3 of the, what are this week? 3 of the top 10 teams in the nation, because UConn, Kentucky, and Oklahoma are all top 10 teams right now, Pack. And so it's nothing to hang your head about, but also it's like, you got to win these kind of games. Like losing this game, I think you said it earlier today, is just not an option. And so that's the thing for Carolina, losing this game. Then you don't play again till next Friday, the 29th, I think it is, against Charleston Southern. And so that's a lot of time to think. It's a lot of time to dwell. And I think it also, losing this game probably rips away any hopes of a 1 seed, maybe even a 2 seed, because the ACC is not going to provide enough quad 1 opportunities down the stretch. And so winning this game keeps you in that conversation. But I would say that losing it probably starts to move you down more towards that 3 or 4 range, since Carolina did lose to UConn and Kentucky and Villanova, who's hopefully going to start getting their foot back in the door. In fact, they've got a critical game tonight as well. I think they're at Creighton, Villanova is. So folks, make sure you're tuned in to that one. Okay, Pac, let me ask you another, talking about mental stuff. What, the Eric Montross of it all, we talked a lot on Tuesday's show about Eric and his legacy and what it means. We already have Coach's uncle having died earlier this year. And so for the guys who knew Eric, who, I know he's not been on the call this year, but for the returners, they had been around him so much. How do you healthily allow that influence to be part of your game tonight? And what are ways you've seen teams get too emotional and it be a negative thing?
Yeah, I think, I've seen it both ways. And, the thing is, everybody's different. So you got to start there. I mean, some people process so differently. As a coach, as a staff, I think Hubert and Lebo and all those guys are probably channeling this in the direction of, this is hard, this is tough.
Yeah.
But the best way we could honor him is to play Carolina basketball, and play it the right way. And I think the players and support staff and everybody else that knew him would agree with that. As Tar Heels, I think we would agree with that. The best way you can honor him is to go out there and play North Carolina Tar Heel basketball. And, but there is the side of, especially with the coaching staff, who's probably very close with him, and some of them even having been teammates with him, I believe.
Yeah. Coach Davis, absolutely. They were for 2 years.
And so, that's personal, and that's going to take its toll. And so you've got to take time to deal with those emotions while also being prepared to take care of your business, against OU and in life. And it makes the OU game seem really small. It really does. But when you think about, what would Eric really want? It's for you to go out there and represent the University of North Carolina in the best possible way, and for you to represent, them in the way you play the game, in the way you live your life off the court. And so I think those are conversations you have to have. I don't think it's something you bottle up. I don't think it's something you don't talk about. You talk about it with your team, and you have that open communication of, let's go honor him.
Yeah.
And you hope that everybody buys into that, but it's really tough because everybody, handles that emotion just in different ways.
Man, that's well said. I love your point. Like, Eric Montross was a quintessential Tar Heel, and the way to honor that is to be a Tar Heel, play Carolina basketball, and keep it in its proper place. Something you said there reminded me that Coach Smith, he would often say, there's people in Asia that don't give a care about, don't even know anything that's happening in Chapel Hill, North Carolina tonight. And so that helps keep it in perspective. But if we're going to go out and we're going to play a basketball game, let's make it happen. And let's do it for Eric in the Carolina way. Perfectly said, Pac. Now, as we start thinking about this game itself, we're going to talk more about Mondo as we get to our Four Corners preview. But one thing I'm really curious is, we had talked so much about waiting for that Cormac Ryan breakout, and man, did we get it in a big way against Kentucky. But the question now is, how's he going to follow that up? Is he going to press? And I don't mean that like playing full court pressure. I mean, like, is he going to press to try to keep that going? I personally, Pac, would love to see him attack right out of the gate rather than just like testing to see if his three is going. Like, I want him to get into the lane, make stuff happen. Looking at the starting lineups, he'll probably be matched up against someone very much his size, just based on what Oklahoma typically rolls out. And I this is the moment where I want to see, to have Cormac have a game, and RJ and Mondo and Harrison. Like, we need that from all of them, but I think it's critical that he keeps going in this game to follow up what he just did on Saturday.
Yeah, the best way to build confidence is to consistently stack days. And so for him, and he hasn't had the opportunity to do that. Right when it felt like he was hitting the ground running in the Battle for Atlantis tournament, he turns his ankle.
Yeah.
And then we're playing catch up from there. And then we hit the long break. And so now he finally had that. He had a nice game against Kentucky. And we need to see that consistently and continue to add on to that. I think his confidence is in a good spot. I think his head is in a good spot. We just need to put 2 good games in a row together and let that flow naturally. And the thing is about this team, I think everything will come naturally because of the way they share the ball and their unselfishness. I don't think they will try to do too much. One person will ever try to do too much. And so he can just play ball, let the game come to him, and, nail his roll down.
I love that. So, who is this Oklahoma team? What do we need to know about them? And let's get to our Four Corners preview so you can be on the lookout for the same things that Pack and I are on the lookout for. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's critically important for the success of your business to have a pool of quality candidates to interview. Thankfully, LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to find them. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They have a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, making it the best place to hire. That's super easy to do when you have that many quality candidates. Look, LinkedIn Jobs knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and they might not have the time or resources to hire. Thankfully, though, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Pack. North Carolina and Oklahoma, cannot wait for this matchup. If you would, why don't you introduce us to the Sooners, this matchup a little bit, and then we'll get to the Four Corners preview.
Yeah, so obviously we have UNC versus OU tonight, December 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 Central Time. And that's a little bit dependent on the game beforehand, how long that goes. On ESPN, it's a triple header. Duke, Baylor, Alabama, Arizona. So it's going to be some good basketball being played.
Great night of basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken Palm line has UNC favored by 1. So
that's tight.
According to the analytics, it's going to be a close ball game.
Tight game. The FanDuel line is not up yet as we record.
I'll be interested to see what that is.
Yeah, same.
Series record, Carolina leads 3-0. 1982 Rainbow Classic win. A game in 1990 that UNC won by 2. And 09 against Blake Griffin team and the Elite 8, which was an awesome game. Seeing Tyler Hansbrough, Blake Griffin matchup, that was good stuff.
And we have to say Blake Griffin got the better of Tyler in that one.
Yes, he did.
And yeah, that 1990 game, man, that was that 8-1 in the second round there. That was great stuff.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
I love it. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. OU coached by Porter Moser. Some of you may think that name sounds familiar. That's because he took Loyola Chicago to 2 different Final Fours, I believe, right? Or 1 Final Four.
They won Final Four, and then they knocked off Illinois that year with Ayo Dosunmu, right? Was the second round, but then they lost after that.
Yeah, so 1 Final Four, 1 Sweet 16, but he's done a great job. 2 tough years at OU, and now he's kind of got them rolling again. So he's doing a really good job there. OU is 19th at the Ken Palm ranking. UNC is 20th. The funny thing about OU is they were picked 12th in the Big 12 in the preseason poll, and so now, obviously, I think if they voted again, that would be a lot different.
It's kind of like K-State last year. K-State was dead last in the Big 12 poll.
Yeah. And it's hard to predict because of the transfer portal and the recruits. I mean, you just never know what teams are going to look like. So OU was picked 12th of 14 teams, and it's safe to say they're not there anymore. They're currently sitting at 10-0. They've got wins against Arkansas, USC, Providence, and Iowa. All of those are right around that 50 mark in KenPom. So there's no real elite team, but those are 4 solid wins that they have. And then, like Isaac mentioned earlier, of 5 of those 10 wins have been against teams that are ranked 295th or worse in the KenPom. So just to give you an idea of some players to watch, Otega Owe, 6'5" guard, 14.9 points per game. And he's averaging nearly 15 on 66% from the field. So when I was first researching OU, I was like, oh, this guy must be a post player.
Yeah.
He's just real efficient. No, he's a guard. And he's a slasher. He doesn't shoot a ton of threes. He's just really efficient. And so
and that's who I think Cormac will be guarding, actually.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. And I think that'll be a very interesting matchup. And then not far behind him is Javion McCollum, who's at 14.3 points per game, 6'1" guard. We'll likely see RJ or Elliot on him. He's a solid, quick, athletic player. And then John Hubert, off the bench there, is their 3rd leading scorer. And he transferred to Oklahoma from Pitt. So some of you may remember him from ACC play. So that's a little bit about OU. And let's dive into these 4 corners here. And speaking of John Hughley and the bench, OU plays 8 players 17-plus minutes per game. And then it's a drastic drop-off. So they've got 3 guys that they go to on the bench. And my question is for this game, can our bench win the bench battle? Kentucky they dominated us in bench play. And now, granted, 2 of their better players on their team come off the bench for them. And for us, that's not necessarily the case. I think the best 5 start. But we've got to have more production from our bench. And so if UNC wins the bench play battle, I think that gives us a definite step ahead of OU and a good chance to win. So the key there is can our bench win that battle?
For 4 corners, point number 2, got to reestablish Armando Bacot in the half court. Had an okay game by normal player standards, but by Armando Bacot standards, his performance against Kentucky just wasn't there. 6 turnovers to boot. He's got to be there, and this is a major opportunity. We look at OU's starting front court; it goes 6'6", 6'9" with Sam Godwin, as that 6'9" guy. When John Hughley comes in, he's also 6'9". So Bacot has an advantage there. In fact, Godwin is only 210 pounds. So Bacot should have the opportunity to do that. Not against Hughley, though. He is a big boy. And so Carolina's going to have, did have, I think, some trouble with him in his Pitt days. But it's critical that Carolina establish Mondo early and often and just keep pounding it over and over and over. Got to get a good game out of Mondo.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of feeds right into point 3. OU is a very, very athletic team, and they're similar to Kentucky in that way. They're not as big and they're not as long, so they're not going to disrupt quite as much, but they're athletic. And so to me, that leads to 2 questions. Number 1, can we actually get into our half-court offense and execute, which would be, feeding Armando the ball through our sets and playing from the inside out? And can we win the rebounding battle? OU is, like I mentioned, they're very athletic. They average 39.5 rebounds per game. And I'm not exactly sure where Carolina is. Last time I looked, they were around 37, 38 rebounds per game. But I know that we've got to get better at it. And so that will be, to me, that's going to be a battle that really stands out. Will their athleticism push us out of what we do? And can we block them out and finish possessions with rebounds?
We're going to have to find that out. And part of that too is, Oklahoma, they shine more on defense than offense. Our Carolina offense, Oklahoma defense are very similarly rated. Carolina defense, Oklahoma offense are very similarly rated. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch play out, and we'll see what happens with it. Pack, as for rebounds, I was just looking at that. Per game, Carolina right now is at 38.1 ahead of the Oklahoma game. So pretty similar in terms of those numbers. The 4th critical thing, we kind of got into a little, like I kind of looked at it a little bit earlier, but the question is this. With the game being in Charlotte and Oklahoma coming all the way over from Norman, can Carolina basically turn this game into a Smith Center game? right? I know it's technically a neutral site game, but Carolina has to own this arena and make it feel like a true away game for Oklahoma. That was so critical in the Tennessee game for Carolina being able to just boat race their way through that first half. Got to see that. So if you're going to this game, show out and be ready. If you're not going to this game, get a ticket and go to this game so that you can make that happen. Pack, very quickly, let's make a prediction each and get out of here.
All right. Yeah, I've got UNC 81-70 OU. I got Carolina winning by 11. I think the home atmosphere, the Eric Montross motivation, I think plays a factor in this. And just the sheer fact that we need this one coming off 2 losses. I like the Heels.
I was going to go kind of close, but a smaller margin. I was going to go Carolina 75, Oklahoma 70. And our Heels covering the spread as we expect and just catapulting them into ACC play. I know there's the Charleston Southern game ahead still, but they're not good. So, Pack, I think that would be a great win and a great way to wrap up the competitive part of the non-conference schedule. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to unpack it, which Coach Rob and I will do on tomorrow's show. Folks, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us again. Come hop into the Locked On Tar Heels Discord. Great conversation going there. You can email the show lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on audio and video. We'd love it if you would rate and review the show. 5 stars, talk about why you love it. If you're watching, smash the like button so we know you're here. And we'd love to hear your comments on this Carolina-Oklahoma game. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. But until then, peace.